I said that to a student once who was whining. They got all mad and called their parents, and I'm like, no big boy pants there. All right, guys, focus. All right. So I wanted y'all to flip over on the back of that little thing we were talking about yesterday, which I hope you saw. If you don't invest, and then we kind of got rushed at the very end, if you're not investing at all, you're really only giving yourself the freedom to spend about $11.70. And again, guys, I do my wife and I together, and we're not rich people. I'm a school teacher for another 21 days. She's an artist. Maybe a little longer if I do a little part-time, whatever. But they were talking about $11 a day. It's not a massive sacrifice after tax money. So you were talking about if you did decide to put that, this was $5,500. You guys are eligible with a Roth or a traditional IRA to put up to $6,000 a year now. I just never updated this, forgot. You're talking about from a non-retirement fund perspective, you're giving up about $2 million at retirement. And that is at 9.5%. And we already looked at that chart and saw that the average CAGR, CAGR, the average of that over any 40-year period has been anywhere from 10 to 12. So at only 9%, it would be roughly $2 million that you're giving up at retirement. This would have been tax-free, which meant that money you could use it and never pay taxes on any of that growth. Or if you did a traditional IRA or a Roth, or a 401k or a 403b if you were in government, we're talking about 2.5 million, which would be taxable, but perhaps you'd be at a lower rate at that point. But the bottom line is it is significantly impairing your ability to retire at some point and be comfortable. And most of the time, throughout my lifetime, bonds have been paying anywhere from 4.5% to 8.5%. And we haven't really talked about bonds. Bonds right now are almost not even a discussion for a lot of people because they're paying such low interest rates. But what a lot of people do is they pull their money when they start nearing their retirement, they pull it out of the stock market, which traditionally gives a lot of yields, but you've seen the stock market, some of those charts, it fluctuates. And the last thing you want is when you're 64 years old and you're about to retire for some big recession to hit and you lose 30% of your income, 30% of your net worth in your retirement fund, and now you have less to live off of. So what a lot of people do is a few years out, they start transitioning from stocks to bonds. Now, bonds will pay much less. Right now, you might get a 2% growth rate in a bond, which really isn't even keeping up with the cost of inflation. So your money is literally devaluing. But in most time periods throughout my lifetime, bonds have actually exceeded the inflation rate because the government's not dealing with pandemics and not dealing with major crises like y'all are struggling today with major other crises like the housing market falling apart in 2007, artificially inflating things like the Fed is doing now to try to stabilize an economy. Regardless, most of the time you can get a 5% bond yield. So do the math on that. If you had $1 million at 5%, it's going to pay you a $50,000 a year income. If you had $2 million at 5%, it can pay you $125,000 income just off the interest off of that. And that's pretty great if you can just live off the interest, right? And we're talking about a single person's investment. If you were married and you and your spouse were both doing that, as are my wife and I, now you're talking about twice this amount saved up. All right. And that's just if you did just this. This is a minimum I'm suggesting. Just don't not do the minimum because this is a tax advantage you have. My hope is that for you guys, you kind of realize that a lot of this throwing money at crazy stuff is just, it's very fleeting. It's living in the moment. It's not long-term decisions. And those things, listen, again, you guys are intelligent people. If you work hard with your intelligence, you'll do well at whatever it is you're doing. Maybe not in the first few years. You might have a job that doesn't pay as well. And then as it grows and as you grow along with that, you end up getting paid better in the later years. But you can still stick the minimum away. I did it as a school teacher. My wife did it as an artist. And believe me, there were some lean years before she started becoming a really well-respected, well-known artist around the Southeast. But it's totally up to you what you do. But it is very easy to go, man, I need a new car. And I don't want to live in that crappy apartment, or blah, blah, blah. I need to have some sweet suits from Shea's. I mean, all those are decisions you make, and you might be able to do both, but don't not do the minimum at least. My advice is to take 10 to 20% of your income, and whatever depending on your income level. Obviously, if you make more money, you have more disposable income, right? If you make very little, you might need almost every little bit just to feed yourself and your family. But those kind of decisions, make sure you're doing this minimum. It's just too costly. $12 a day is not worth giving up $2.5 million at retirement. Yeah.
Would you bonds in the first one before you put it in bonds?
I don't have any of my money, honestly, in my Roth IRA, which is this one. But I'm pretty sure the way this works, at least the way it has worked for me, is you have your money taken out of your check and put, like if you're doing a retirement fund, you take it out of your check and you fund your traditional IRA or your 403B or your 401k. Before you ever even get your paycheck, it is taken out and funded. The Roth IRA, you kind of do yourself. Now, you could do a traditional yourself too, but a lot of people talk to their employer and they say, hey, we want you to take this money out immediately, and you orchestrate it with a broker or a Schwab or some firm that does that. And you get a little form signed where you want the money allocated, and it just kind of automatically happens. Like if I was getting hired here, I could go down to the central office. I don't even know who's in charge of that. Back in the day, it was Miss Potts or whoever. And you would go in there and go, hey, I want to put my money in my traditional IRA, my 403B, or my RSA1 if you're a teacher here, whatever it is. And they say, okay, how much would you like to put in there? I would like to do the maximum contribution I can make. Actually, a 403B lets you put up to, I want to say 20% of your income. So if you're making 75 grand here, you can put up to 15 grand of that away in your retirement fund tax-free. Now, if you can afford to do that, a lot of people can't afford to do that because again, they're teachers and they have kids and it's very expensive to live. But you can put up, I want to say it's up to 20% in your 403B. But the point is, it would be done automatically. The Roth IRA, you're doing it with after-tax income. So on a Roth, you're already paying your taxes, right? Paying all your taxes, then you decide to invest. So that's really kind of on your own. Like for me, at the time I went to my Schwab account, I said, and it says like open a new account. You click that button, what kind of account? And one of the options would be like Roth IRA. And you click on Roth IRA, would you like to fund this? And sometimes you can fund it for a prior year if it's like the first 3 months. Like it's too late now to fund 2021 because it's past the tax deadline of April, whatever it is, 15, 16. So I would say, yes, I'd like to fund the year 2022. And I just take cash and I stick it in there. Now, once the cash is in there, then you can buy stocks, bonds, whatever that platform that you're on, like Schwab, you have lots of options. And then I can let you buy penny stocks and junk bonds and things that are, you always hear the stories like, oh man, I bought this so-and-so, this startup company for 2 cents a share and it went to $4 a share and I made $1 trillion. Yeah, you hear about those. You don't hear about those. Yeah, man, I put $2,000 in those penny stocks and the company went bankrupt like 2 months later. Nobody brags about those. I don't advise you. That's just gambling, right? Unless you have insider information, and then it's illegal, right? So either way, it's kind of a bad thing. So my advice to you would be, again, everybody wants to be a brilliant stockholder. Everybody wants to, beat Vegas or whatever. Those things are fun, but it's kind of gambling. So the best thing to do is go, all right, what's been consistent? The most consistent thing is betting on the market. The market has always slowly climbed. Maybe it's scary in the moment. Like this week has been so erratic. It's gone up and down 10% from the high and the low just this week alone. Well, in the last 5 days alone. And that's not comfortable when you're looking at it going, but you don't worry about that. You worry about the long term. Now, if you're funding this in the short term and you want to, in the long term and go, hey, I'm just going to put my monthly allotment in there in my retirement fund. And then I'll watch the market maybe on the side for my non-retirement investing. That's fine, but it's kind of the same thing. You put your money in a fund that will have a different name. Like if you were to pull up my account, which I'm not because I want to show you my numbers, but if you were to pull up my account, there's my wife's and I main investment account, and then all my kids' investments accounts. And then you'll have my Roth IRA. Then I actually had a traditional IRA because there was 1 year when our investments gave us this bumper crop. And we were like, nice. And my accountant goes, y'all made too much money this year to fund your Roth. And I'm like, what? Like, how did that happen? I mean, in a million years, I never thought I'd be in that category. It was just that 1 year. And he goes, but you can still fund your traditional IRA. I was like, well, let's fund that. So I have my traditional IRA, which I don't even have one other than that 1 year's allotment. And I'm even going to roll that back into the Roth in a different year. And then what else? Oh yeah, I got a 403B account, which is an account I quit funding when I started funding my Roth. And gosh, I don't even know what else. I'd have to go look at it. And then I have a separate one. My wife has a separate account for her Roth or whatever. So all of those accounts, but I could literally take money out of my main investment account where like my check and we put all of our money. I can take money that and just shift it into my Roth, shift it into my wife's Roth. And then once it's in there, I can buy bonds and stocks with it. And there might be a way that I can actually shift stocks in there. It's possible, but I've never done it. Normally, I'm just funding them. And it really is not a big deal. Right now, I know you're like, I don't know how to do that. I wish I could actually go. I'm not pulling up my numbers, but like, I wish I could just show you. You can. If you just click on Schwab. I'm saying Schwab because I have that account. It used to be through USA. I don't care what platform you use. They're all pretty competitive, pretty similar. And most of them don't even charge you much anymore. They're just happy to have your money. But anyway, if you go to one of those accounts and just start clicking buttons, it's pretty self-explanatory. And then you can link a bank account. Like if you have a checking account, you could go, I'd like to link this account for transfers, blah, blah, blah. And you might have to fill out some paperwork and upload it to them. But you get that documented, and then literally, if your paycheck goes to your checking account at Regions, you can just upload that money in there. Put it once it's in that account, you can buy and sell stocks. Then, if you sell a stock, it becomes cash. Usually, it's a couple days once you sell a stock for it to become spendable again, because it takes a process to move the paper around that they're doing that you never see, and then you could bring it back. Like my son is. Every now and then, like, Dad, I'm out of money. I need you. Can you liquidate something? And I'd liquidate some stock. It takes a couple days, and then I'd switch it over to his account. But listen, if I can figure it out, you guys are more tech savvy than I am. It's not difficult to do. And if you ever struggle with it, call me. I'm still around. Happy to. You got my number. Happy to help walk you through it. So yes.
So was like the Roblox thing on Reddit? Is that technically
The what?
like like last year the stock market? We watched it in class because like a bunch of people on Reddit were saying to buy that one stock.
Oh, the GameStop thing.
GameStop.
Was that Reddit or was that
Reddit? Yeah, it was Reddit.
It was Reddit.
Was it technically illegal?
No, it's not illegal at all. It's just so unprecedented that people weren't aware of it. I mean, usually there are trends. When people do something in the market, when something happens, there's usually a reason. So people, like anything, right? If somebody walks up and punches you in the face, you're going to start being wary of that person, right? If every time they walk by, they punch you in the face, you're going to start keeping an arm's length, right? You just start learning patterns in your behavior. Well, people do the same thing with stocks. So when people start shorting stocks, they assume, oh, it's probably going to fall. Well, these guys, nobody paid attention, but these guys were collaborating and doing it at such a rate, people assumed certain things, but they weren't. And they drove the market in a certain direction, and then they took advantage of that. And the guys that weren't paying attention, and they should have been paying attention, play less golf, manage your accounts. Some of these companies lost like $13-14 billion because these guys were all in cahoots and they really took them for a ride. And they were crying foul. That's illegal. That's illegal. No, they're just smarter than you. And they pulled off kind of a nice little heist, but it wasn't illegal. They were shorting a stock, which was basically, I think it was shorting. They were shorting a stock, which is basically betting that it would go down. Well, what does that make it sound like? Maybe they know something. Like right now, Bill Gates is shorting Tesla, and it's torquing off Elon Musk, because if Bill Gates, one of the wealthier people in the world, is shorting something, people are like, ooh, he knows something, right? So they start selling stock. And what happens when they start selling it? It starts decreasing in value because people are flooding the market. And as it decreases in value, then people go in there, buy it up, the market shoots upward, and then they sell it at the peak and they make some money. Well, you and I don't have the freedom to, I mean, we have the freedom to do that, but what impact am I going to make? Ooh, I bought 1,000 shares of stock. I mean, 1,000 short sales. That's not going to make a blip on the radar. But when somebody like Bill Gates does it, people are like, what? And people assume he knows something. Well, those guys on Reddit, they were all in cahoots. It was like a big operation, and they just kind of fooled everybody. And everybody looked at it and perceived it as, oh, they know something without doing the research. A lot of well, there's a bunch of people involved in it, but if a one firm lost 14 billion, somebody cashed out and did pretty well. It's still risky, right? I mean, like I did that one time. I shorted something or put in something, I forget. And you can look up all those terms. I don't do it anymore. And I basically I put a $300 bet that it was going to rise or drop. I don't even remember. And you have a certain time limit for it to rise or drop and hit that number. And it just never hit the number. I was out $300. I'm like, why am I doing this? This is literally gambling on which way the market's going. And it's fun and it's exciting, but it's stressful. And at the time, $300 was like real money, you know. So that was probably late 90s. And the market was really volatile. And I don't even know why I did it. Probably my dumb brother goes, hey, you ought to try this. Whatever. Of which he probably made a tidy commission. Anyway, yes.
So how much of this stuff is linked to your job? You were talking about earlier going and talking to some lady at the school about putting money in your Roth.
Yeah, there's always somebody at every real firm. Maybe not if you like have a small little mom and pop, you know, like Sam's Super Sandwiches or something. But like most companies that you'd work for, most companies, they have a little finance department, accounting department. And they deal with the checks and the writing and all that. So like my daughter works at a very small little company that buys they do large volume scrap metal sales, and she works in the office and kind of manages that kind of stuff. So in that little office, one of the people in charge there in that office deals with their 401k, and they have a little 401k set up where they have matching contributions and stuff like that. So when she walked in there, she goes, Dad, what should I do? And I went, well, what do they offer? She goes, well, they match it up to this, this, and this. I said, what do you think you can afford to do? She goes, this. It's like, well, do it then. Because they're basically matching your contributions at some level. You're getting free money. Why wouldn't you do it? You don't even need it. I mean, she's single and making, what is her, 55 grand a year as an English major. She's married to a guy, or will be in a month, making 55 grand a year. They're going to have a combined income of 110 with no kids, no debt, living in an apartment that costs them $1,200 a month. I was like, you guys ought to be pounding away 10 to 15 grand a year minimum. Because after taxes, they're still going to have 75. I mean, what are their expenses? They don't have any. I said, you guys ought to just be pounding away money, saving up for a down payment, saving up to, I would be doing this if I were you, doing this as a minimum. And then whatever you have in excess, start sticking it away for a mortgage, try to get, I don't know, whatever kind of house you want. If you want a $250,000 house, most people, you need to put 20% down to avoid mortgage insurance. And mortgage insurance is like, what if you bought a house, right? And say you bought a house for $300,000 and you put a down payment of 60 grand on it. And then all of a sudden you get a better job out there and you can't sell your house and you're like, I'm not paying you anymore. And you walk away from it. Well, the bank immediately owns this house, right? Because they actually own the house anyway until you pay it all off. So they own it for 200, but they've already let you borrow 240,000, right? So they've got 240,000 in this house. They don't need another empty house, right? So the first thing they're going to do is sell it. And they're not interested. All they want to do is get back their 240. Are you with me? That's all they're interested in. If they get more back, it's not theirs, it's yours. So they'll list the house at 240 just to dump it. They just want to get their money out of it. They're not concerned with you. They're concerned with themselves, right? Because you own 60 grand of it because you put the mortgage down. So more than likely, they'll sell it undervalued. And when they sell it undervalued, they keep their money, give the rest back to you. Well, if you can't put a 20% down payment on there, say you only can put 20 grand down as opposed to 60. Well, now basically they're loaning you 280,000, right? Well, 280,000 is harder to get out on a quick sale. Well, maybe not in today's market at Homewood, but like in some places, yeah, you can sell your house in a day in Homewood for more than you listed, maybe by noon. But in most economies, they're like, wait a minute, we might not be able to get our money out quickly. And if we can't get it out quickly, we're losing money, right? Because that money is tied up in your loan. I could be loaning it to somebody else at 3 or 4%. So if they sell it quickly, they might actually lose money. So they make you pay insurance on the mortgage called mortgage insurance or MI. So mortgage insurance, if you don't have 20% put down, is just an extra expense for you. Why would you do that? So the best thing you could do is be funding this retirement account and then putting away as much as you can for a mortgage. And then when you're ready to buy a house, you can buy a house. And if you're like a single dude or a single girl, I mean, think about that. And I have many friends who have done this, that they'll go right out of college, and some of them are just, their parents are kind or gracious, and their parents is like, hey, we'll put a down payment on a house for you. I'm like, thanks, mom, thanks, dad. And they'll put a down payment on a house, and it's a 3-bedroom, and they'll rent it to their friends 1 room at a time. And they'll say, hell, I'll rent you this room for $750 a month. And the friend's like, awesome, I can live in a house and not a crappy apartment for $750. And that's like rent, utilities included. And literally they'll have their 2 friends living with them, which is fun, right? But their friends are paying their mortgage. So they're literally living there rent free, because a mortgage on a $300,000 house isn't going to be more than $1,500 a month. So little things like you could do, as soon as you get that money saved up. Y'all know who Chris Rebels is? He's a big time Christopher Architects. Anybody heard of that? He went here, but if you ever see the really pretty white houses at Homewood that you're like, oh my God, there's a good chance it's either Niket or it's Rebels, Christopher Architects and Interiors. But Chris went here back in 1987. He graduated. He's on the wall of fame as a wrestler and as a nose guard. You wouldn't know. I mean, he was honorable All-American as a 150-pound defensive nose guard, because he was the strongest pound for pound person I think I've ever seen. He was benching 375 at 155 pounds. Ridiculous. And he would just blow, and he ran like a 4.40, super fast, super strong. And he was a state championship wrestler too. He's on the wall there. He's bald now, but you can see him on the wall with actual hair. But anyway, one of the first thing he did, he started buying little properties right out of the gate. He saved up some money immediately, bought a house, started renting it, lived in it, rented it to his friends. And he just started buying properties. Now he's probably worth $100 million because he owns properties all over the country. He's also a brilliant architect, really cool designer. Anyway, real estate is a great thing to do starting out, because especially if you just have enough to cobble enough to get an apartment, or a house, especially if you have a house like in a nicer area where people want to live, rent it out to your friends, let them pay your mortgage for you. You're paying your mortgage, you're building up an investment, and maybe in 15 to 20 years, depending on when you pay your mortgage off, now you have an income producing stream for the rest of your life. You know, those are really great assets to hold and to do. But anyway, I wanted to show you one other thing on the back of this. We didn't talk about yesterday, federal income tax brackets. A lot of times you'll hear somebody say something like, yeah, I'm in the 24% tax bracket. If you're in a 24% tax bracket, or a 32 or a 37 or 10, it doesn't mean you're paying that percent on everything. Okay? Think of it as a giant piecewise function. The way income works in this country right now, and this was a 2019, I pulled up the 2021, all the tax rates are the same. The only difference is these have bumped up a little bit for inflation. Not much. Like, I think that's 10.1. That's like 40,200, whatever. But this is what it means. The first, I think it's 12,000 you make, you don't have to pay taxes. That's why you hear stuff like, oh, kids don't pay taxes. No, kids pay taxes. Miley Cyrus paid a butt ton of taxes when she was a kid. Okay, still does. But when she was 15 and 14 and what's that show she was on? Hannah Montana, yeah. When she was Hannah Montana, she was bringing in cash, performing, making tons of money. The twins, the Olsen twins, they were worth $1 billion by the time they were 18. They're each worth $500,000 apiece last time I checked. Or, I mean, sorry, $500 million apiece last time I checked. They paid lots of taxes. So it's not about you being a kid. It's about when you're a kid, you don't make $12,000, right, in a year. Now, you guys at $16 an hour, you worked your tail off. You might actually make some serious money. I don't know how many hours a week you'll work. 20? Oh, wow. So if you made $300 a week for 50 weeks, well, there you are. You're at $15,000. you will probably get to the point where you're going to have to pay some federal tax if you did that. Okay. Now, state tax, you start paying it after 3,000. And our state rate is currently, I have it on this side.
I did my W-2. I got like $70. It was terrible.
Ah,
Yeah, like nothing.
well, you didn't pay anything in then.
I mean,
So if you pay, like the way they do, if you've had a job, they kind of figure out what you're getting paid, how much you're making a week, and they average it and they go, okay, what would he owe at the end of the year? That's what they tend to do. So if they project you guys to make like $8,000, they'll go, well, if they project to make $8,000, he's probably not going to pay any federal, but he is going to pay some state. So they start withdrawing a little bit out of your check for state taxes. And at the end of the year, when you file your return, your tax return, you take it's a W-2 form they'll send you, and you take it, and you go on some tax site or whatever, and you fill it all out, and you enter the stuff they tell you to enter. You used to have to do it on paper. My dad used to make me do it on paper to do my taxes. It was terrible. Anyway, but now you can just say, what's your name? And you just type junk in, and it spits out what you owe or what you're getting back, and you automatically file it. It's not hard. TurboTax is one thing. There's a state and a federal thing that you can do it on. Anyway, point is, if you overpay, at the end, they send you a check back. And some people like to overpay, but I'm like, okay, you can give the government your money and let them hold it for a while, but it does kind of feel good in April and May when you get your check back and you're like, 300. I got 14 grand back once. Now that's not necessarily great. That just means I didn't make much money, right? If you overpay in taxes and then you don't make much money, and you're like, oh, I'm really happy to get it back, but that just wasn't a great year. A great year is when you owe 20. Like I've had a year where I've owed 20 grand and you're like, this is horrible. I owe 20. No, it just means I made more money than I thought I was going to make. So it's not a bad thing. I mean, Elon Musk paid what? 11, 12 billion dollars in taxes that year. I'm sure he didn't love stroking that check, but poor guy to make enough money that he owed 12 billion. It was the biggest single tax payment in US history. But again, I'm not crying for that guy, and I'm sure he's not either because he's worth 300 billion.
Wait, so like, what tax bracket is he in?
The highest.
So what is that?
It's on the back of this. So this is single. Now there's also a chart for married. So if you're married and filing jointly, that's not really an advantage if you're both working and making similar incomes. Where it's an advantage is if one of the people, say you're a mom and you're staying at home, or maybe you're a mom and you're bringing in the cash so the dad stays at home. I know a guy like that who's an artist, singer, songwriter, and he takes care of the kids. His wife does something. I don't know what she does, but she actually makes really good money. And he's like handles the kids and performs at night occasionally, whatever. But the great thing is if one person's not making an income, visualize all these categories double. So you wouldn't enter the highest tax bracket until you were over close to $1 million. So if one person's not making the money, it kind of gives that other person a break because you're kind of doubling these categories. But each person gets $12,000 free, which is why you guys won't pay federal tax until you eclipse $12,000 a year. Now in state, you're going to pay it over $3,000 in this state. And we don't have a sliding scale. In this state, over 3, you pay 5% of everything. In places like California, you might only pay 1 in those low brackets and move up, but it also moves up to 12 or 13%. In this state, 5 flat, which is kind of crooked. It really benefits the rich and kind of hurts the poor, in my opinion, but whatever. That's for the politicians. But the way it works like this, once you get the free money, everything over 12,000 gets taxed. The first 9,000 you make is going to be at 10%. So you're going to pay $970. This is just federal. You're going to pay $970 of that money over 12 grand. So like if you made 21,700, you get the first 12, no tax, you're going to pay 10% of the next part. And then if you make over that, anywhere in this range, the amount over this, and again, I'm calling this taxable income. So subtract 12, and then anything over that and in between there, you're going to pay 12% of that amount plus the 10% of this. So you're not paying 12% on everything. You're just paying 12% on the amount over that, but under that. Now, if you get past that, so say this is like the $51,000 mark. You make 51, you get a free 12, you got 39,000 taxable income. If you make over 50 and all the way up to 96, you're going to pay 20% of that increment, plus 12% of that increment, plus 10% of that increment. Are you kind of following that? and the increments keep moving. So if I make $522,301, right, which would be the taxable income plus the 12, I'm going to be in the 37% tax bracket, but I'm only going to be paying 37% tax on that $1. Are you with me? But if I'm making millions of dollars a year, then everything over that taxable income, I'm paying 37%. Are you with me? So that's over a third of your income just to federal, plus 5% to state. Now we're at what? 42%, plus Social Security, which is 7.65. Now you're at 49%. Plus, if you live in Mountain Brook or Homewood, municipalities will have local tax. It might be 1, might be 2. Now you're at a solid 50%. So when people start talking about tax the rich, let me ask you a question. And I'm not saying everybody, I just have a problem with fair share. Because think about it. If you are very wealthy, all right, and I'm not crying for the wealthy, that's not me. But if you are crazy wealthy in terms of your income, all right, and you're working your tail off, and in the state of California, you can pay close to 70% in taxes. And that's just your take home. That if you have a company, you're going to pay the corporate side of that too. If your company profits, you're going to pay corporate tax, and then you're also going to be taxed on your income. So it can almost be double taxed. So when you look at all this, what is motivating you? This is the thing. Who's hiring people? Guys that make crazy money, right? Those are the people that are employing people. And you're like, man, I'm working for 50 cents on the dollar. I'm working for 38 cents on the dollar. Why am I working so hard when they're taking all my money? And you have to think about the economics of it. The kindness of it is, yeah, you're really rich. Why wouldn't you want to help out others? But the really rich, a lot of times aren't wired that way, right? I kind of look at it this way. And this is my opinion. You're welcome, obviously, to yours. Think about it like this. Would you rather have for dinner all the wealthy people go through this giant banquet and eat their food, right? And you come back and you get I know this might be a little harsh, but the leftovers of wonderful food. Or, I don't mean like somebody gnawed on a chicken bone and threw it out and you got the leftovers. I'm talking about get the leftovers of wonderful food. Or would you rather tax the wealthy so badly that they either leave the country and go bring their business somewhere else, which drops the quality of things, and then now you're getting first dibs at an average table. An average table of food. Do you want first dibs at an average, or do you want second or third dibs at wonderful? And you have to start asking yourself questions like that. Think about healthcare. I've heard many wise people say you can have good healthcare and you can have cheap healthcare, but you can't have good, cheap healthcare. You got to pick one or the other. And a lot of countries that have socialized healthcare have very affordable healthcare, but it's not great. And a lot of people who have, like I knew a person who was married to a Major League Baseball player in Canada. Like it was one of the Canadian, what is it? The Montreal, well, it used to be the Expos. Who are they now? The Blue Jays? Anyway, they lived in Canada. They have socialized healthcare. And she was pregnant. And she used to go here. Her name was Eleanor something. I forget. But anyway, she used to go here and I ran into her so much. She's like, yeah, I'm married to a Major League Baseball player. We live in Canada. I was like, well, what are you doing back here? She goes, well, the healthcare up there, I'm pregnant and they don't allow me to get any neonatal care up until like 6 months. It's just not paid for. And I'm like, what? My wife was seeing them like every 2 weeks, starting at like 2 months. So she goes, I know, we come back here to get healthcare and we just pay for it privately. And we overpay, but I fly down here every month to get the care until that insurance kicks in. And again, it's cheap and it's affordable and it's for everybody, but you're getting first dibs at a lower level table as opposed to maybe second or third dibs at a higher level table. And that's what capitalism is. You're always going to have people that are on the front row of the game, of the basketball game, sitting on the sidelines, and you're like, man, I wish I had that ticket. I can't afford a $3,000 courtside ticket a game. I got an Auburn friend of mine who has courtside seats at Auburn games. To get standing room only tickets at Auburn games, it's $250. I'm like, I'm not spending $500 for me and my son or me and my wife to go to an Auburn game. He's got courtside seats. He makes a ton of money, right? I could look at that and be bitter, or I could go, you know what? It's okay. I live in a world where I can watch that Auburn game on a 75-inch television in my house Capitalism has been quite wonderful to me. You might not like it. Young people tend to go, it's just greedy people. I would agree with that. It is. My brother is a greedy guy. He also employs 250 people whose average salary is between 90 and 100 grand. Okay. So that he is giving people better lives. He's doing it in a greedy way. It's benefiting him, but it's one of those things, that's capitalism. It's different than most places on this earth. But I wanted you to give an example about a guy I used, and he is in Alabama. He made $150 income. This is single. You don't pay taxes on the first 12. That's 138 grand in taxable income. With that, we talk about the tax rates right here going through there. He ends up paying $27,000 in federal taxes on the 138 taxable income. He's also going to pay 5% of any income above of $3,000. So that makes him pay $7,350. In California, just to show you, that would be his tax rate on this amount of money, because it's tiered, kind of like our federal is. And then blah, 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 blah. FICA tax, he would pay 7.65 of that, which is this. And by the way, there's a cap on FICA. They don't make it, the most you're ever going to pay is $8,239 in Social Security. That's it. So the downside of that is you're not going to be able to, you're going to have the same Social Security benefits if you made $1 million a year as somebody who makes 150 a year, because you're only paying that amount. It's not meant to keep the wealthy completely wealthy. It's supposed meant to keep you alive at a very low level, by the way. But if you are a private owner, like self-employed, like my wife is, you pay double that. So self-employed, you would be paying whatever that is, $16,000 if you were. So anyway, so far you're at $42,884 in taxes, unless you were self-employed, in which case you pay double that 7 point and you get $51,000. So $51,000. Let's just say my wife made $150 this year and she was single. She would pay $51,000 of her $150. So she would have basically 2/3 of her income to spend. Now, once you have that 2/3, when you spend it, what are you paying in Homewood? What's tax? 10% of that you're going to spend out in Shelby County. It's more like 6, but they don't have as good a school systems as you do. But then in property taxes, you're going to pay property taxes. You're going to pay taxes. I just paid just the license plates for our cars in our house was over $500, and only one car is new. So you're paying taxes, and I just listed some of them: sales tax, county taxes, fees put on flying. You probably haven't bought a plane ticket, but when you go buy a plane ticket, it's nuts how many fees you're paying to the federal government for that fine RSA service that we get. Anyway, tax. So think about when people start talking about raising taxes. To me, it's hard because the federal government does everything so poorly. You've seen that if you've ever gone to the RSA. Not the RSA, the DMV, and waited in line for something, and you're like, oh my gosh, hire somebody else. Get this line going. No, they don't care. They'll let you sit in line for 2 hours, and then like, sorry, it's 5 o'clock, we're going home. I don't blame them, because they're not getting paid to work with you, right? There's no private incentive to do better. The post office literally runs at a multi-billion-dollar deficit a year. They lose money. They lose money every year, and they have for dozens of years. If you privatize that, I guarantee you somebody will find a way to be efficient. You have UPS makes money. FedEx makes money. Post office, nope. Lose money, and your taxes keep paying for it so that I can send a 50 cent. I mean, just so you can put something in the mail for 50 cents. Anyway, the government is not, they do things terribly. If they were efficient, it'd be awesome. And if you got a really false view of the government with this school system. This school system is the government. But man, look at the parent involvement. Look at the people who fight to get in here to teach because it's such a better situation. You have a false sense of how the government operates. Go to Hoover, go to Mountain Brook, see the bureaucracy, go to Spain Park, go to the inner city school systems, go to the rural county school systems. Oh my gosh, it is so bad. I remember teaching an honors algebra 2 class out of that same green book that you guys use in my student teaching at Smith Station High School, which is just outside of Columbus, but still in Alabama, Columbus, Georgia, but in Alabama. And to the honors class in May, the class had made it to chapter 9 out of 15 chapters. We do all but chapter 14, which was vectors in algebra 2. And we do a bunch of other stuff. The honors class made it to chapter 9. The next year I came here, I taught algebra 2 to 12th graders. Like the weakest of the weak I had. Well, the weakest 12 algebra 2 people I had in this class. They were very fun. Has anybody ever heard of Shallowest of Jewelry? Have you heard of it? Anyway, Laura Gaines she owns that. The people on the Bachelorette wear their jewelry, and it's kind of national now, but she's done really well. She's got a little shop in Mountain Brook. She just put a storefront up there. But anyway, she was in my class. Horrible algebra 2 student, brilliant artist. She does all her own jewelry, designs it all. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, with them, I got to chapter 13. So the best of the best in rural Alabama didn't match up, was below the weakest of the weak in Homewood. That's what public does in most situations. And you always heard Cleveland, Bill Cleveland, do you remember him? When he was our superintendent, he would say, Mountain Brook, the public school masquerading as a private school. Yeah, they have a pretty good school system too, because they don't even pay attention to the federal government. And they get slashed funds too. They don't get as much from the federal government as most places because they give them the finger, but they don't care because they property tax everybody to death and they have tons of money for their school system. But anyway, the government is typically, if you're looking to the government to be your, what did Ronald Reagan say? The scariest phrase in the English, whatever is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. He goes, be afraid of that because the government doesn't manage well. It doesn't. It wastes money. There's so many greedy people out in the world. There's super greedy people everywhere. But in government, if you screw it up, oh, well, there's more taxpayer money coming in. It's so easy to screw up and go, so what? We're taxing you again. You screw up in the private enterprise, what happens? You go out of business and somebody better takes your place. So that's my opinion. Take it, throw it away, keep it. I don't care. But anyway, anybody got any questions at this point where we are? Nothing? Okay, when is y'all's big test?
Like do this math on classwork?
No, not yet.
Next Friday.
I don't even know if we're getting to that until. Okay, tomorrow we are going to start talking about pulling out the calculator. Anybody not going to be here tomorrow? Thursday. So on Friday, you guys, 5 of you are in AP Euro, but you'll be here tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow, guys, make sure you have your calculator. We're going to pull this out. You're going to start seeing the eighth wonder of the world, time value of money. You're going to be blown away with what kind of position you can put yourself in financially. What's that? Are you crying?
She's recording.
What's today? Wednesday. She goes, no, tomorrow's Saturday. You thought it was Friday?
Yeah.
I have never missed 2 days. One day, yes. I thought today was Thursday when I woke up. All right, because it's Wednesday. I was like, eh. That's what she just said. Yeah.
Oh.
Teared up. That's hilarious.
Guys, everyone, come watch the soccer game on Thursday and Friday.
Y'all Friday night at home?
Yeah.
Who is it? Mountain Brook? That's 7. Okay, I gotta make. And that's the quarters or the semis? What is that?
Quarters.
Quarters? Guys got a tough draw, didn't they? Aren't they like the second best team in the state? And they're playing the first best team in the state in the quarters.
So are we, I guess.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, it's real on areas like that.
It does.
But still.
Yeah.
Like, I have no need for school except for this class.
I don't know. Like, literally the only reason I'm gonna be here after.
Well, I'm fighting for, it won't well, it's not gonna benefit you. But I'm fighting for, that whole deal of trying to make it where you, if you're in an advanced class, they're not called pre-APs anymore.
You can't
They're called-
exempt it.
That you can exempt it.
Oh, yeah.
So I've written like a big dissertation.
Like,
They're actually, they're feeling it out. I love this new administration because they're not
Like
just
exempting-
doing,
This,
Is this for this year?
probably won't affect. Yeah, I think you're allowed to do one this year,
but
aren't
we
you?
can't exempt you.
But not in advance.
This is my only.
Well, I just wrote a big, long letter to McBride. But I don't know if it'll matter for this year, but they do listen.
Also, wanna, like, talk about moving, like, being able to take this, is having a week, days to take it.
Yeah.
You don't have anything,
I don't have anything.
Exactly.
So I would literally just be waiting.
Or
Sitting out.
studying.
Yeah.
Not really, because you probably need a 62 to keep your
For
A.
real. I just, once my AP exams are done, I'm gonna be coming to school for this class. I would rather come here and go home. What else am I gonna do? Come
Probably could.
Come for Latin and like, I'm gonna take
You probably could come and go home.
a 99 in Latin. We have 5 tests we've taken that have not been put in the grade book. We have 1 test in the grade book for the whole year. We've taken 6.
For the whole language.
I'm exempting, no, the whole year. The entire year, we've taken 6 tests, and 1 of them is in the
How
grade.
did you get 9 weeks grade?
No tests. They're just not in there. I can show you. Look.
So you have 9 weeks grades that have no grades. He just throws.
That have like homework grades. Look at this 9 weeks. None of that looks like a test to me. We taking tests 9 weeks. 3. Well, there's a quiz that hasn't been put in. But no tests.
You said grades.
Isn't that wild? Oh, there's one worth 25 points. Anything else?
So he just didn't grade.
Or they were so abysmal because no one knows what they're doing that he just didn't put them in. Oh, am I coming for that? Am I coming for Coach Carlson, who is the nicest, funniest human being, but he structured the class so we can hang out and talk about life. And then, dude,
You know, I think that's why Welly gets a pass. Because I had somebody tell me once, I know less Latin now than I did when I started.
Oh, absolutely.
And I said, he goes, but I do know a lot of other life lessons. And I think it's like, I think they value that in some way.
Or I feel like he just seems like he's so overqualified for this job. He like went to Stanford and has done all this archaeology work across the world, like Indonesia and Africa. And now he's teaching. It just
Likes kids. I mean, I guess.
doesn't make any sense. Anyway, just it feels so pointless to show up now because like I'm gonna be coming for this class. The only reason that I stay through the day is this class and physics, which are 1 and 7. Everything
Yeah.
else to me is just like
It's fine.
I don't know. I like the percussion concert on the same day as my physics exam, so it really feels like the only thing left in school is this period. What are they gonna do if I just leave? Just don't know.
Probably nothing.
I can take the quizzes for history online. I can text them and ask them for the answer.
Probably could. We can do it at home.
They'll give it. Like, I don't know.
You can hang out with your buddies here.
But all my buddies are in the exact same situation.
If we all got up, if we just went, then you could maybe do something.
Yeah.
Or work more, make some extra cash.
I make so much. Like, okay, one thing I was gonna ask you is, do taxes like fluctuate by week?
That's what you make, yeah.
Okay.
You're just taking a percent of whatever.
Okay, because like let's look at this. So I made more money this week, but had less net pay. Less money, more net pay. That doesn't make any sense.
Just pay net.
All right, so this is what I take home, and this is what I'm actually paid before taxes.
So almost all of that's FICA. Because 7%
So why
of
did it
that is
change
roughly
then?
$40-something. So you're only paying an extra 40 for, well, I didn't want change.
So like I made more money this week and took home less.
486, 429, what's the other week?
Or it's 586,
Right, sorry.
429, 532, 442. What? How's that?
That doesn't make a lot of sense, but.
I mean, it doesn't really matter that
Oh,
much.
well, they might take out like something weekly and then something monthly. So maybe they only take the FICA out at the end of the month.
Okay.
That
makes
might
sense.
be the case. I don't know.
This was the last one of the month.
There's not a breakdown of it, and you can see it. Like
Probably
individually.
can on the website.
I bet there's something they just pull out monthly, because it's like a monthly
Yeah.
payment they make to the government and everything else just happens. Because that would make sense if you get paid weekly.
Okay.
Because the government might say, we need monthly FICA payments.
Mhm.
And then, but the state and the federal might go, oh, we need to pull that out of a check. That way you don't have one check that they just hammer.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why they wouldn't do it weekly, but that would be my guess,
That makes sense.
but I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Good day.
You too, bud.